It's the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast, Episode 8. As a productivity enthusiast, you're hooked on making improvements. For any number of reasons, you're intrigued by the idea of making progress by continually shaping your behaviors, your apps, and your devices, your system. For that reason, you pay attention to advertisements and you read articles because you want some new ideas, right? How in the world do you make sense of the hundreds of suggestions made to you each day from people and companies around the internet? So a long time ago, when the internet was just invented back in the mid-90s, early 90s, you could actually chase down every lead and they were fruitful. But now there are endless rabbit holes to go down. How do you get to the point where you don't try to pay attention to them all or unhook yourself from chasing down bright, shiny improvement objects? Tune into this episode to listen to me and my special guest, Carl Pullein, as we solve this challenging problem together. Welcome to the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast. Welcome back. And just before we start, I want to remind you of our agenda here on the podcast. So we spend the first part of our discussion explaining and digging into and tearing apart the problem. We want to really know that it's real and its impact on the lives of those who can't solve them. So we're talking about practical problems, everyday problems. Then we're going to pivot into, I guess, what you might call Act 2, where we work to solve the problem. And while we're solving the problem, I'm actually going to be using a bell to pick out those moments when we come up with something that's brand new. It may not be brand new in the grand scene of things, but it's new to Carl or I, like a new insight, a new point of view, a little bit of an aha. And if we get to the end of the episode and we don't have an aha, we actually have a buzzer that we play, which shows that as hard as we worked, we actually didn't uncover anything new. So let's see what happens, but let's start with the story. It's a conversation between Mike and his friend Sandra. So this is Mike talking. Hi, Sandra, you won't believe what I found. A new app that does auto scheduling and it uses AI. She says, really? Tell me more. He says, it's built in Germany, been in development for 5 years. It uses narrow AI, not just AI. And guess what? It's free. They're doing beta trials. She says, whoa, well, what's it called? I'd like to try it. He says, oh, well, hold on. I think I wrote it down somewhere here. Let me look for it and I'll send it to you as soon as I find it. 2 days later, he calls her up. I'm so bummed. I wrote it all the details on one of those Post-it notes that I stuck to my monitor. And it blew away over the weekend. There's no way I can remember it. It had one of those long German names. I actually got it from a broadcast TV show on a random channel, so I don't even know what show I was watching, what channel it was. It's all gone. And then fast forward to 2 weeks later. Guess what, Sandra? My friend shared a brand new app with me. You gotta try it. It's really cool. So let me introduce you to Carl Pullein. Carl is calling us all the way from South Korea. And to let you know a little bit about Carl, he's a renowned productivity and time management coach who has helped thousands worldwide. And he's helped them get better at managing their time, becoming more productive using technologies and strategies that work for them. He's written 3 books on productivity and time management, and he coaches companies and individuals worldwide in his one-on-one programs. He's developed a time sector system, something specifically designed for the 21st century. He's passionate, dedicated to help people become better at managing their time so they can focus on what's important to them. And he puts out YouTube videos, presentations, highly interactive, entertaining, and educational workshops. Carl, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Francis. It's a pleasure to be here.
All the way from cold South Korea. which is
Yes.
middle of the night right there. So we appreciate your losing your
It is.
sleep to spend time with us. Very big
Normal,
contrast.
normal day in the life of me. Start early, finish late, and try and get enough sleep somewhere.
I admire. Yeah, we welcome you and so glad to have you. Let's dig into the problem. It's what I call the bright shiny object problem. And if you're listening in, you may have resonated with the story that I shared between Sandra and Mike, where perhaps you've also had a feeling that you are looking at too many improvement opportunities, that you have opened up the floodgates and now there's lots of them coming at you. And maybe you're feeling a sense of being overwhelmed. And I compare it to trying to eat or at least taste everything that's presented to you in an advertisement. So the average person gets, I forget how many hundred advertisements per day, if you're living in North America, for example. And if you decide to taste everything that you see in an advertisement or eat a little bit of everything that you see in any given day, you probably burst. So there's no way you can control or no way you can engage in your diet based on advertisements. Yet, Carl, isn't that what some of us do when we consume?
It is. Actually, I think I remember it was something like we get 3,000 adverts a day.
Lovely.
Coming at us from our phones, from buses, from departments, wherever you walk, you're just going to hit an advert somewhere. Apparently, it's about, on average in North America, it's 3,000 a day. But there is a bit of a problem if you're in the productivity world, is because fortunately our brain is very good at filtering. So we tend to ignore the adverts we're not interested in, but you notice the things you are interested in. If I see the word productivity, it's like, whoa, my eyes are straight onto it. I can be scrolling through something, anything randomly, and I see the word productivity or time management, and my eye zooms in on it. And it's one of the best things about our brains, but it's also a bad thing for our brains. But I remember, I can't remember who did this. Somebody gave a really good analogy on this. It's like, if you see a car that you really, really like, and it's like your dream car, it's the one that you want to buy. And, wherever you are, you finally, eventually you buy it. Right. What you'll notice is the next day, you'll see hundreds of people driving the same car. Because your brain now is going, I'm filtered. This is the car. Every other car just blends into the background except the one you like. So I'm a huge Range Rover fan, and we don't get many Range Rovers in Korea. There are a few, but not many. And my radar for Range Rovers is I can see them.
You need to buy one, obviously. Dark. That'll fix the problem, right?
It's weird how your brain works like that, but that's where a lot of the problem is that we are, our brain is it's designed to spot patterns, and we tell them the pattern. And, if in my case, and as you say, in your case, you see the word productivity or time management, and there you go, you're clicking.
In the States, they call it catnip for cats, which is like, a kind of a food or a meal that a cat cannot resist. And I think it comes originally from that early hit, because there was a point where we didn't care about productivity and it just seemed to be a burden, right? And then for some reason we came across something and we tried it and it worked. And the feeling of going from failure and ignorance to knowledge and improvement was intoxicating. And for us as productivity enthusiasts, we want more and more and more of that. And maybe that's where that filter came from. What do you think?
It probably does. I mean, it is. Our brain is, I mean, if you think about it, we've got 5 senses. Actually, we have more than that, but we've got 5 main senses, sounds, smell, sight, touch. And that's a lot of input coming into our bodies every day at any moment in time. But fortunately, we're very good at filtering it out. And if we go back hundreds of thousands of years, it was food and shelter and safety. And those were the main things. Oh, life was so simple back then, wasn't it? We didn't have to worry about productivity tools and apps and things. It was just like find food, find shelter, and stay safe.
Right. So there's something primeval going on, is what you're saying.
There is.
We except that for us, we instead of it being about food, it's about, I think it's about improvement. It's about the delta. It's some
Yeah.
dopamine that we get from being able to chase down an improvement, try it, it actually worked, and we could see ourselves being better at the end of it. Because if we really want to, if we're ambitious and we really want to grow and learn, this is like, this is awesome, right? We can find,
Oh yeah.
it's better than it was back in the day when the internet was first invented or first rolled out, or back in 1993, 4, 5. Productivity books were something you went to remember you going to the library and going to the productivity section, and you wanted to see if there was a new book. It was like, oh, something new. And you got all excited because, and the number of books that you could read was really small. And
well, it's also actually similar to the the self-help industry in general. Is
yes,
back in the 70s and 80s, it was all tapes, and
remember,
people would put, buy the tapes, and there was people. Yeah, it was Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, and I suppose in the 1980s, 1980s Tony Robbins,
20 audios,
and Les Brown. I mean, all these guys did these tapes, and they're brilliant. I mean, even today you can actually go back and listen to them, and they're brilliant still. But the choice, you're right, the choice was actually quite limited. There was only about maybe 10 in total who were famous enough to get your attention. And if you think about it, back then it was really expensive to produce a series of tapes. And I think Brian Tracy's tapes were about, you buy a pack of 10. It was like chapter 1, chapter 2, and it was like, and you'd put them in the car. For Brian Tracy to do that, he had to have a lot of money. But today, you don't need any money. Anyone can just put a blog post together, put it on Medium or Reddit or something, and boom, you're a productivity expert. So it's totally different game now.
Right. It's almost as if we loved the hit that we got originally, right? We decided that things are better because we didn't have to go to the library, we didn't have to get the tapes and put them in the car. Now we can have access to all these different sources, and we opened up our channels to receive them all. Because the more the merrier, right? If we had a hit, if I did a productivity program, and I remember reading Stephen Covey, and I can hear his voice. Begin with the end in mind. And that's from 1995 or 6, because I played it so often that
many times,
hearing I can still hear his voice going through the 7 habits. Sharpen the saw. I can still remember all of his catchphrases.
Yeah.
And those limited channels, it seemed as if we benefited once the channels became open, and we could, like you said, we could get on Medium, and you can find 500 articles. This is like,
easy.
We really do act as if the more the merrier. But is the more really the merrier?
Yeah. The problem is that we know, like, even going back from the designer Dieter Rams, the guy who's famous for Braun, he's I think his motto was less is more. But he was the one who was fighting that in the 1980s, probably actually 90s, because he was at Braun 60s, 70s, and 80s. He was fighting that. He was
right?
Yeah. But he made things like record players, and actually, if you see his first tape machine, it looks like the first iPod, because he was Johnny Ive's hero. So Johnny Ive was hugely influenced by Dieter Rams. And he's still in his 90s, he's still around, his Dieter Rams, amazing guy. But his philosophy was less is more at a time when we were breaking out into this more is more, and we want more, and we want more. And Dieter Rams, to his credit, stuck to his principles all his life, and it's probably why his design is still so iconic today, because he didn't jump on that bandwagon and go, okay, add more, because people want more. And we think we want more, but actually more is what gives us, I think, I mentioned before to you in the pre-talk about The Paradox of Choice, which was a book written by Barry Schwartz. he did a great TED talk. If you don't want to read the book, by the way, there is the TED talk. It's on YouTube. It's from 2006. It's about 20 minutes long, but it's a brilliant TED talk. But he explains it so well that, we live in the Western civilized society where, we're living in abundance now. And so what do we have? Well, freedom, because we can choose, the freedom to choose. So I think he gave an example. If you go in to buy some salad dressing, and this is back in 2005, there was something like 225 different salad dressings in the supermarket. I mean, how do you make a choice?
I'm glad I live in Jamaica for some reasons. And one of the reasons is that there's not that many choices and certain things are limited. And I like it that way.
Yep.
But for us productivity people, I feel as if we've done the exact opposite of the smart designers that you describe, which is that we're in a business of consuming bright, shiny improvement objects as fast as we can and to get as many of them in as we can. I give you an example of what we have to deal with. For the task management and time blocking virtual summit coming up in March, I have a list of 270 thought leaders in productivity. And that's not all of them. This is just those who care about task management somewhat. This is not everybody, because there are others in other fields. That's a heck of a lot. A lot of them are producing videos, podcasts, writing books, doing blogs. And then there are productivity apps related to task management. There's at least another 150 to 200 that I found. Now, they're all going to be, these lists are going to be available at the summit, but they, in a real sense, what value are these two lists? It's kind of, wouldn't it be better if someone just came along and just handed you one box of tapes and say, here, this will last you for the rest of the year. There's nothing else like it. So
yeah,
then it would take away the dilemma of having to decide, right? And you wouldn't be distracted and jumping around like Mike was in the story, from one thing to the next, 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 and therefore adding up and making no improvements as a result.
Well, the problem has exploded since around about 2009, because up until then, we didn't really have that much choice. There was GTD, which you had in like a moleskin, because it wasn't digital. It was always paper-based. So we had that in a moleskin. We had the Franklin Planner. Wow. I was a Franklin Planner user. Brilliant system. But the thing is about those systems is you couldn't add anything to it. The competitors could come along and they could try and do something similar, but, we're going to add another section. But if you think about the Franklin Planner, you had all your addresses and telephone numbers in the back. You had a place for your goals, a place for notes, and a calendar with a to-do list on every day. What more do you need? And it was really tough for competitors to enter the market. And then 2009 came and the smartphone revolution. And then, whoa, I mean, it just went rapidly, like just a saturated market with so many different ways to do it. And this is ours. We look at this color and look at our colors and look at that, and look at all these additional features, which is where the bright, shiny object problem really comes from, is because now, and even today, 2022, that's where we're at now, is where these app developers, and I'm not criticizing them because they're brilliant people. I know quite a few of them, but what's happening
they're
now,
friends.
in order to, some of them are, but what it is that what you're doing is in order for them to compete, they have to keep adding features.
Right.
And that's not helping the consumer. In fact, that's really causing the heart of the problem in this particular example. Is this new app has this additional new feature. This makes it better than the one I was looking at last week and the week before. And that's where the real problem is coming now, is way too many features. And
the thing is that people like app developers or content creators, and we're content creators, right? What we do to try and break through the noise is that we try to become better marketers. So the poor consumer is now faced with all this better quality marketing, all of which is trying to get his attention to say, among the app developers, use me, buy me, download me, try me.
Mm.
And for us content creators, I have the best idea. This will produce the best results. I have testimonials from God Himself. And we, we give all these great reasons as to why
Mm.
our thinking is the best thinking. And the
Mm.
poor consumer is left just like following one bright, shiny object after another, kind of a deer caught in the headlights,
Mm.
because there certainly is no one saying, here's how you choose. They're just left to their own devices to sort of face the barrage on their own, no?
Mm. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think it's a little, I mean, it's a really difficult field for people at the moment coming in, because it is getting very, very complex. You're right. And it's not just about choice now, it's also about complexity. And what's happening is it doesn't help with, I suppose, people like me on YouTube who
Guilty.
I mean, actually, one of the things I won't do is I will never review apps, because that's not what I do, and I don't want to add to the problem. So I do talk about the apps I use, because that's part of what I want to show. This is how I'm using these apps. But I get emails pretty much every single day now from app developers saying, we'd really like your YouTube channel. They always start with that one. We really like your YouTube channel. I think, oh, thank you very much. Would you mind reviewing our app? We'll pay you on your channel. And I say, I'm sorry, I don't do that. I only feature apps that I use. So, in my case, it's Todoist, Evernote, and I play my hobby projects, which are like Apple Notes and reminders, but they're just hobbies because I'm really curious about what Apple are doing. But I don't look at anything else anymore. I just stopped because it was getting ridiculous. It was about 3 years ago, actually. It wasn't the bright, shiny object because I had no intention of changing, but I thought, oh, I'm in this productivity field. I need to know what's going on with the apps. But about 2 years ago, I just said, no, this is getting ridiculous. It's almost every week as some new app that everyone's talking about.
How could you keep up?
No, you can't.
You couldn't. You do a show, even if you did a show every day. There's no way
you're right.
that you. And what would you say each time that, oh, you finally found the answer every day?
Yeah.
And your audience
there is no
like,
answer.
and pity the poor person who let's say he and I've seen they do have podcasts that focus on apps. And the poor person who logs in and watches each one and tries and actually follows the advice ends up trying a brand new app each week. And then what progress do they make? Or even when it comes to behavior, same thing, right?
Well, it then comes down to the question is, what are you actually trying to achieve here? Are you trying to be on the productivity app gravy chain? That's great. I mean, there's no problem with that, but that needs to be, expressed. That is my goal here. Or are you wanting to become more productive? That's where it comes down to. Most people, unfortunately, think, no, I'll stay on the gravy chain for a little bit longer.
Right. And gravy meaning the money train in particular, or just the gravy of dopamine?
It's the productivity gravy chain. It's just going round and round and round. There's more, there's more being added all the time, and it's just going round and round in circles. But if that's what you enjoy doing, and I know some people who say, I love playing with these new apps. Well, that's great because they've expressed that. They've identified that that's something they enjoy doing. There's no problem with that. But the problem is if you're doing that and you're trying to tell yourself, I am becoming more productive, because you're not.
Right. Because you're not.
You think you are, but you're not.
You think all of that motion should add up to some progress, and it really doesn't.
As I say, you need to be very clear about what you're wanting to do here. I mean, I used to look at other apps as a bit of a hobby, but that's how I described it. It was a hobby. I had no intention of changing. I was just curious about what other, apps were doing. But I expressed that. And so it was very clear in my mind, this wasn't about trying to find a better productivity system, because I felt my system was great. I was just, what's going on in the productivity app world these days? And so that was, but that was the problem is, I'm sure you've been on it. We have been on that train. We've been, oh, another new app. It's going to solve my productivity problems. It never
But
does.
then you might think you could go cold turkey, right? And then say, okay, I'm not gonna. And then that fear of missing out.
There is the fear of missing out. Yes.
All of a sudden, it seems like somebody will say something to you, and you're like, well, "What's that?" Like AI.
The last time that happened to me, the fear of missing out. The last time it happened to me was Notion. About 3 years ago, everyone was on the Notion telling me, you've got to try Notion. So I did. And I jumped into it. I thought, okay, I'm going to try with this. I spent 8 hours playing around trying to get it set up how I wanted it. And I went, whoa, stop. It was Notion that kind of taught me my valuable lesson. Stop doing this because it's not improving you. It's not improving your productivity. It's actually destroying your productivity. That's not, I don't mean Notion destroyed my productivity. What I mean is it was that looking at these apps and then wasting 8 hours in a day trying to get it set up with the right colors, right typefaces, right boards and databases. Oh, I was having so much fun, but I wasn't actually doing any work.
Right. It's as if the half an hour you used to spend evaluating an app, because the first app you ever used and the app that you use today, you had to do some evaluation before using it. You had
of course
you had to spend some time. Maybe you spent a half an hour there, and then you chose, and then you got to work, and the presence of the app has sort of receded into the background. It's become like your glasses. You don't think about your glasses when you're wearing them. You just wear them, and they kind of disappear into the background. But that half an hour that you spent and that you invested doesn't scale. So somewhere between half an hour and 8 hours, a real problem starts. So spending more time doesn't give you more reward. I think that's what Braun is all about. And I think that's kind of what we're saying, is that something that works in terms of trying to find new apps or new behaviors or new habits or practices probably won't scale. The way that you use to search for it doesn't scale.
But there's another problem as well is, okay, let's say that you spent that 30 minutes, 40 minutes, even 6 hours, 8 hours, and you said, I'm going with this app. What's the time cost now in terms of having to learn how to use that app? Because your previous app, like I've used Evernote for like 13 years nearly now. I mean, I can open it up blindfold. I can use it blindfolded. I know the keyboard shortcuts. I am so fast with Evernote because I've used it for so long. But if I decided I'm going to stop using Evernote, I'm going to try Notion or OneNote or Obsidian now. I've got to evaluate it. So there's a time cost there. But the unknown time cost, the one that is really difficult to measure, is the learning curve, because that really slows you down. Plus, you've got to take all your notes out of your previous notes app and move it into the new notes app. I mean, the time cost is huge. And while that is happening, you're not growing. Your system isn't getting any better. And you're going to have to really, really, really hate the app you're using today for you to really have any benefit from switching.
Right. It's a switching cost. It reminds me of moving houses, moving your home. That there's the searching for the home. There's the moving into the new home. There's making the new home as productive, comfortable, and effective as the old home. And inevitably, whenever I've moved, I've always underestimated that switching cost.
Yes. I just moved house.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about. I just moved
house, yes. I know that one.
It seems as if it's going to be that hard until you're in the middle of it and you're like, I can't even plug my device in because there's no plug in the right spot where I need to. And then I need to, then how do, even basic things become really, really hard. But I think that's the challenge for most people, is that they are inundated with choices. There's no good thinking about how do you make a switch? What do you switch to? How do you decide between the switches? And then there's a discounting of the switching costs, which, to content creators, we tend not to emphasize the switching cost. If you want to pick up a new behavior, sure. Nice, bright, shiny new behavior, sure, pick it up. And we discount all of those switching costs. The same for app developers. Just download it, try it. You'll see it works. It's nice. And they discount it also. And it all seems as if it should be easy. But those of us who have been through a few changes and tried a few bright, shiny objects, I think we're weary. So I think it's time for us to talk about some solutions now.
Yes, okay. Yeah. By
Now
the way,
that
just
we've-
before we finish there, I should
Yeah.
just say one of the things that I've met David Allen once over here in Korea. Now, he's been on my podcast as David. And one of the things that blows me away about David Allen is his productivity app of choice is something called e-productivity that he started using in round about 2000. He's been using it now for 22 years.
Is it
They
software,
don't even
at
make
least?
it is software, yeah. They don't even make it. I mean, it's part of Lotus Notes. I mean, I thought Lotus Notes died a long time ago.
Oh,
Lotus Notes got bought by IBM, but he's
Right.
still using the same system for 22 years. Now, that told me something about productivity.
Right. It does. It probably has lessons about switching cost. He's not searching for a replacement all the time, so he doesn't spend it. Good. Okay. So, what are some solutions? How should people behave differently with respect to not chasing these bright, shiny objects and falling into the traps that we talked about before? What are some initial thoughts?
Well, the first thing is if you are brand new to productivity, you do need to do it. You need to go and have a look. But there are some parameters that you really want to be thinking about first, one of which is how would you like to see your task list every day? Okay, let's just start with the task list, because some people like to see a list.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are more visual and want to see those cards like Trello or Asana does, the cards, and they can move them around. That's, to me, whenever I'm coaching somebody and they say, I need a system, that's the first thing I do. Well, what do you want to see? Do you, in the morning when you start the day and you want to see, well, what do I need to do today? Well, what do you want to see?
Right.
That's usually the first question.
There's something slightly before that, right? But as you said, which is that if you're just starting out, so I'm going to interpret if just starting out to mean that you are using memory and random other practices. So your
bits of paper, post-it notes.
your system is memory, personal memory, plus bits of paper, like random bits of whatever you can find, test tube, envelope, post-it note, pad, whatever, an app here and there, but it's all kind of random. So there's a memory plus random stuff. So you have a system that's really not working, and it can only manage a certain number of tasks effectively, like 2, maybe 10, 15. But it's small, right?
Yep.
You're not talking a whole lot. You're not trying to do. You're not someone who's trying to build a building. You're not in construction. You're not in a profession where you need to build these massive multi-year project plans. So you're probably in a profession where you can get by kind of one activity after another. Maybe you're an emergency doctor.
Well, it's kind of like, when did I last do the bed linen? When did I last wash the bed linen? I can't remember. Well, it's time to wash it. I can't remember when I last did it. Okay, maybe it's time to wash the bed linen.
You mean it just occurs to you?
Yeah, it's just
as
like,
opposed to it being planned.
There's a funny smell in the bedroom. When did I last smell? Oh,
okay. That
productivity system. It's a really good one, actually.
All random thoughts. So
it's when something goes wrong, it sort of alerts you. Oh, there's a funny smell in the bedroom. But when something goes wrong,
and the car is broken down, and the dog's not fed, and my wife is leaving me, or my husband is all of a sudden it occurs to you that.
Yeah, that productivity system. Yeah,
I need a system. So they come to you, and you help them to organize. Think about their tasks first, and you ask them, where do you want your tasks? So you start to assemble.
It's more about not where, but how do you want to see it?
Okay.
Because some people say to me, because I've had a few clients who say, "Oh, I love pen and paper. Great, let's do it in pen. Let's do it in the notebook." It's not ideal.
They're used to using it. They're not used to using a smartphone,
and they're going to use it. That's the thing.
You reduce the switching cost by keeping them in pen and pencil. So you keep them in the modality that they've been using, and you ask them to make as small a change as possible to move to the next level.
Yeah, because the big solution for me is it's the system, not the app, it's the system that you're using. So whether you do it first on paper, in a notebook, or whether you do it with the built-in apps on your phone or computer, it doesn't really matter. But it's about building that system first. That's the number one. It's not the app. If you start with the app, you get filtered into the system that the app developer wants you to use, which might not be the right system for you. So the solution is start at systems level, not app level.
And are you also saying that if you're coming from memory and random bits of paper, you need a kind of a first landing spot? Like you're going to the moon and you need a landing. You need a first system to kind of hold everything together that's more reliable than memory.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a single notebook, or if they're digitally minded, I say notebook, it doesn't have to be. It can be. You said, no, I'm perfectly happy on computers. I love my phone. I'm always on it. I'm iPad or whatever. Great. Let's go digital. But
all right, let's call that the step one change then, because that's a change we've all been through. All productivity enthusiasts have been through step one, where we went from, again, memory plus random bits of paper and random to something looking like a system, whether it's on paper, on a phone, on a computer, but it looks coherent and you're able to manage way more tasks effectively. So your capacity increases and you make that change. So when people go from, I agree with you, when people go from memory and random to having their first system, it's kind of a beginner's move because it's your first move. And at that point, when you make that first move, you probably aren't looking at a whole lot of apps and a whole lot of, you haven't had that experience, and you're not like us who, every time we see the word productivity, we start salivating and getting excited.
Well, you got to think of it this way.
It's like,
it's like, I don't know what they do in Jamaica, but in the UK, when you learn to drive a car, it's always a 1 liter small car. It's not a Ferrari. They don't teach you to drive. They don't teach you to drive a Ferrari. They teach you in a small 1 liter little car. And my first car after I passed my driving test was, I think it was an 850cc Mini.
Mini
Minor, yes, brilliant car. But my parents didn't go out and buy me a Ferrari. Well, they couldn't afford to buy a Ferrari anyway. But they didn't buy me a souped-up sports car with all the bells and whistles. They started me out with a simple, I think it was 4-speed manual gearbox, 850 Mini, Austin Mini, I think it was. Brilliant car, loved it. But that is exactly the right place you start, right at the, with the smallest possible thing, so that you can learn how to actually do the process, which is the system. So
is it fair to say, maybe this is our first insight, that for someone who's making that beginner move, the bright shiny object challenge is not an issue yet. Really, they're just looking to make that first step to something stable and something somewhat reliable.
You're right, but there is the danger of the bright side shiny object, because where do you go to find the system? Where do you go to find the system?
Because at some point you get tired of the Mini. You start getting that itch, right? Because
But it's not that. It's just that most people don't buy the Mini. They go on Google and they start looking for productivity, and they just get thrown at Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsches. That kind of productivity system is just too powerful for them at that stage.
Right. So the coaching is to stay simple. If you're a beginner and you're using mostly memory, the coaching is to find anything and use it so that you have some stability and regularity. And once you do that, however, you will come up against the next improvement, because that first improvement, if it's effective, that first transition, the switching costs were probably moderate because you're using memory.
It's minimal,
It's not huge at that point because you haven't invested in anything tangible yet. It's really a matter of changing your personal behaviors, which some people can't do, but it's still of a mental nature for the most part. So someone who's more experienced though, and now has to weed through all of these options, how do they make sense of all of the changes and all of the, not changes, but all of the possible changes they could make.
Well,
what
again,
kind of advice do you give at that point?
Well, I go back to, what's not working?
Mm-hmm.
So look, what's working and what's not working. So there's all good productivity systems have three foundations. It's the collecting. You need it to be easy to collect all the inputs that are interesting to you or impactful for you. You need to organize that somehow, somewhere, and then you need to be doing the work. Mm-hmm. Now, what normally happens is that you get to the point where the bright, shiny objects are getting brighter and shinier, mm-hmm. and you start to focus on the first two, collect and organize, and you start neglecting the most important one, which is the doing.
So you get hooked on the improving of the system,
the collecting and the organizing, and then you start looking for like the AI calendar that shall organize your schedule for the week, and you think, that will save me so much time,
because that's where you made the big gains when you were a beginner. So you're kind of hooked on making those level improvements to your system as opposed to looking at the overall outcome at the end.
Yeah. And it's like,
I agree with that. Yeah.
You know, I've noticed that the latest thing, and again, I think Obsidian is a good app. There's no problems with it. But what I'm seeing on websites and blog posts about Obsidian is people say, oh, wow, I can connect my notes together. Well, I'm thinking, well, yeah, you've been able to connect your notes together for a long time in most apps. But, oh, no, but it's all done automatically. I'm going, oh, all right, okay. But you see, that might be great. But the thing is this helping you to get more work done? Right. That is always the question.
And I think that's where they
don't ask that question.
Right. I think that's the antidote. The ultimate antidote to the bright, shiny object is kind of the question you asked before. I think, what am I trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And if what I'm trying to accomplish is a material improvement in the way I do my task management and mm-hmm. my time blocking, mm-hmm. then it's more about my trying to find the solution to my problem than it is my reacting to the latest advertisement that I saw.
Well, yeah, and the problem is with the latest advert that you saw is that tells you the problem that you've got. And you didn't realize you had that problem. You know, I didn't realize
that I have a problem. I didn't know.
You know, before Obsidian, I didn't realize that I had a problem with my notes not connecting together. But, you know, for 12 years, I was fine.
I was fine.
Suddenly I'm thinking,
AI was.
I've got a problem.
But
I don't have a problem. That's the thing, is my system works.
Right.
That's the thing. And Obsidian or any of those apps, I think there's another one called Roan Research as well, which is very similar. It's not going to make me more productive. It might, you know, connect a few notes together, think, oh, I didn't know. But, you know, I use tags. So everything's connected anyway. So why do I need it to do it automatically? I like actually the control, to be honest. That's one of my most important features for me, is that I'm in control. I don't want the computer, because the computer doesn't know that if I have COVID. It doesn't know if I didn't sleep well last night. It doesn't know if I feel fantastic. It doesn't know I had an argument with my wife this morning or not. Right. You know, AI is at its very beginning at the moment, and we are human beings. And I think we've got to start trusting ourselves to make the right decisions and not try and delegate it to some computer that doesn't know you and will never know you.
Right. The coaching I give people is, listen, there's only really one change you should be trying to make right now. And then the next, and then the next, and then the next.
Yes.
But you really should be, you know, trying to figure out, how do I make the one change I need to make? And I tell them, mm-hmm. I believe there's a Pareto effect when it comes to these improvements, that 80% of the difference you want to make will come from 20% of the changes that you can now make. So it's actually a small change you're looking to make. You're looking to make the best small change, but it's going to be small, and it's probably not going to be in an advertisement, and it's probably not going to come from a friend. It's probably not going to be in a random blog. It actually is probably going to take some self-reflection so that you can go and find the exact solution that you want. So you kind of need to be able to define it. If my car won't start and my mechanic tells me that it's the starter that's bad. So I don't go, you know, opening car magazines and looking at Oh, look. Look at this new thing that they have, new muffler. Oh my God, they have this new intake manifold. Oh, look at this. Look at this new,
Mm.
look at these tires. That's all a waste of time. It's better for
Yeah.
me to focus on where can I find the right starter. It's a fairly small item in a car,
Hmm.
but where do I
Hmm.
need to, where can I find the one that my car needs in order for it to function? So the one still kind of works, but it's going out. So I need to replace it. So my search is now narrowed down to the one part that would make the biggest difference,
Hmm.
not all the full range of parts. So in a way, I ask people to ignore everything and focus on the one. What do
Yeah.
you think of the advice, though?
No, it's absolutely right. I mean, you can't change everything all at once. If you did, you'd be completely lost. It's because, it takes a while to build habits. And if you're changing a whole system, and that means changing apps, like particularly if you're changing your task manager, calendars, you can probably change them quite regularly because there's, calendar is just a calendar. It just tells you where you need to be on a specific day. But your task manager and your notes is a different thing altogether because those are really personalized and they need to work for you. And it's like, again, we can give with my Mini, if the starter motor went on the Mini, there's no point me going out and buying a Lamborghini starter motor because A, it's not going to fit. And
Right.
B, is either going to be way too powerful for the Mini and just blow the whole thing up.
Right.
Right. I need to just get a starter motor that's going to fix that problem.
Right.
And that's the important thing.
Right. And I think that's where people have the difficulty, because if they can't figure out that it's a starter, they will try the tires. They sometimes will try to go buy a whole new car,
Mm-hmm.
and the switching
Yep.
costs, that, or they'll change apartments.
Mm.
There's too much noise in my apartment from my neighbors. I don't want to go talk to them, so I'll move instead.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
as you move, you pick up a whole host of other challenges and issues because
Yeah.
the switching cost is so high. So
Mm.
almost like the most effective change to make is the one that produces the greatest result. And I think the free benefit that goes with that is that it may carry the smaller switching cost.
Yeah. I mean, really, to me, it's about really asking the question, what do I want to accomplish today?
Mm-hmm.
Or that's the productivity question that I ask myself pretty much. Well, I do it the night before. So what do I want to accomplish tomorrow? And it's a really simple switch. It's 10 minutes before you close the day, just 10 minutes. Ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish tomorrow, and write it down. Now, if you think in the world of productivity apps, I could have a list of things in Notion or Obsidian. I could have a list of things in Todoist or To Do or TikTok or whatever. But really, the only thing that matters is what I want to accomplish tomorrow. And that can be done on a piece of paper and left on my desk for tomorrow morning. And the thing I always say to my clients is, if that works for you, don't change it because it's working.
Mm-hmm. Because
And
the 80% of what they're doing is working.
it's working. I mean, if
It's a
it's a
20
case of like,
that
and then
doesn't.
they might say, "Oh, but I really want to go digital." I said, "Well, why?" Because your system is working as it is now.
Let's call that the second insight, which is switching costs. So
Mm,
I've never heard a podcast or anybody talk about switching costs between productivity apps,
mm,
behaviors, devices, or to be more granular, um, task management, note taking, and calendar apps on the digital side, or if you're on the paper side, the journal that you're using, because
mhm,
that has. I remember when I used to have a day runner,
mm,
and the reason I didn't have a Filofax or one of the others was that day runner was available in the store. I could get
mm.
the refills. And fortunately, I picked a system where I think I deliberately did it because I had a choice of picking another system that went with a training. And I
Mm.
said, I don't see that stuff in the store, so let me pick the one that's similar. So even if you're using paper, the switching cost, back then you had to order, if you couldn't get the paper, you'd have to order the paper refills.
Mm, mm,
It was like this whole thing. But the switching costs are a factor even if you're only using paper.
mm,
And I think the most of us under, maybe this is one of those what do they call them? Psychological biases, where
Mhm,
you underestimate the switching cost of a
mhm.
productivity system. Carl, you need to coin a phrase for
Oh,
that.
it's the sunk cost dilemma
Well,
or something. I know
but
what you mean. It's a
sunk
sunk
cost
cost dilemma
fallacy,
or something. Yeah,
where
that's it. The sunk cost fallacy or something.
you under, but applied to
Yes.
productivity
Well, I've
systems.
invested all this time now. I may as well continue. Mm,
I may as well continue changing. It's the opposite of the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost
yeah,
says that you don't change because you've invested too much in the current.
yeah.
It's the opposite. So I'll leave it to you to come up with a phrase
Well,
for
if you're
that.
going down a productivity hole, if you want to become more productivity, stop digging. That's the
Right.
way I would put it. Just stop
Stop digging
digging.
for rabbits.
Yeah,
Right.
because
And focus on the improvement that you need to make that's going to move the delta, move the needle the most.
you know the thing that I've noticed with productivity, and this is based on what I found worked for me and as what worked for so many of my clients is there are some really basics, and none of it involves bright shiny objects. It's like beginning the day and looking at your list of things to do and saying, right, I'm going to do these, and closing the day and making sure you got a plan for the next day. It's basically have a plan. Where you put that plan doesn't really matter. If you start each day with a plan, you are going to increase your productivity massively.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason is most people don't even start the day with a plan. They just think, oh, my to-do list will tell me what to do tomorrow. And they open it up and there's 70 tasks for today. It ain't going to happen. It doesn't matter what to-do list you're going to have. You're not going to do 70 tasks today. Not unless
Right.
they're all like 30-second tasks. You might do it that way, but no task is, well, if you're putting 30-second tasks into a task manager, you're
You're
using
doing
it
something
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
Right.
the
That's
reality of
uncommon wisdom, though, isn't it?
yeah,
The start of the day, beginning of the day, the what I intend to accomplish and did I accomplish it, and then closing the loop on
basically,
a
yeah.
regular basis
Yep.
is
You do that
not,
and you'll massively improve your productivity.
but it's not very bright. It's not very shiny, and
No.
it's
Not
very
sexy.
unsexy.
Yeah,
It's
it's not
totally
sexy.
unsexy, but it's typical of the, I hate to say lack of discipline, but the business of
Well, you're
narrowing
right.
down
It
your
is.
focus. Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like we're, go ahead.
sorry, it is partly to do with a lack of discipline, and that's probably because of all this choice that we have. We think, oh, we can change
Right.
this, we can change that. But the thing is that
Right.
one thing that I really believe in is that you've got to have a structure in your day. One of the big things is people will say, I'm overwhelmed by email. Well, how much time do you spend on, how do you manage your email? Well, I just reply, I look at my inbox and reply to the important emails. Well, the thing is, email is just a part of life today, and you
Right.
need to spend some time each day dealing with it. So
Right.
block yourself 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour each day, depends how many emails you get. Block it in your calendar and just make sure you do it every day, and you'll never have a problem with email. But most people think, oh, I can't do that. I'm too busy. Well, you've got to do it sometime. When are you going to do it? If you don't do it today and you leave it till tomorrow, now you're going to need 2 hours.
Right.
Where are you going to find 2 hours if you're already very, very, very busy? Yeah.
I think there's a corollary to the switching business that you're introducing there, which is that probably the simplest changes you need to make don't involve a new app. They don't involve getting any advice. They're more a function of, I think, getting really quiet and figuring it out on your own.
Well, one thing I wrote down in my notes, because I didn't want to forget it, because I just know it's so important, is if you do it yourself without looking at apps and reading blog posts and YouTube, you work it out for yourself and it works, the confidence you have will stop you from going after bright, shiny objects.
Ooh. Ding, 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 ding.
And that
Yes,
is what worked for me, was when I realized after reading GTD, and I brilliant system, and I thought, this is great. And I used it for a while and it worked reasonably well, but I modified it, changed it, worked it, updated it for the new modern digital world that we live in today. And I did this on my own without reading lots of other blogs. And I kind of found my own way. And I'm going, wow, look at what I'm doing every day. It's amazing. If my wife, like today, I washed the car, vacuumed the car out. That's a 2-hour job. I took the dog for an hour's walk with my wife. And I still got all my work done, and I don't feel stressed. I don't feel tired. And I think when I have days like today, I think to myself, my system works. And that confidence repeats itself. So it stops me from trying somebody else's system, because I think, well, that works for them, but it ain't going to work for me. I found a system.
And and you found a method of self-improvement.
Yeah.
Because your confidence probably isn't in the system that you currently use. Your confidence comes that you can change it. The fact that you can change it whenever you want at will.
Well, no, actually, no. My confidence is. I have to be honest. My confidence is in my system now, but it's taken a long time. I mean, I made all the mistakes we've talked about. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm this monk who's been perfect. All these things that we've talked about. I've gone after the bright, shiny objects. I've done it all, but it wasn't until I realized that if you develop your own system, you develop confidence in your system, and that will stop you from looking at bright, shiny objects, because you think, yeah, that works for them, but this works for me.
But I think, aren't you also saying that when you want to make the next change, whatever it is, you're confident about making it?
Well, it is, but I'm also now focused on what I need to change. Like, I need to be able to collect faster. If I can collect faster and organize faster, I can do more in less time. And when I can do more work in less time, I have more time to spend with my dog, washing the car. I enjoy washing the car. More time walking the dog, more time going to the beach, because I'm focused on what's really important, which is the doing.
Right. So what I hear you saying is you're in a virtuous cycle of improvement, powered by past improvements. And the future doesn't need bright shiny objects for you, because you're already in a virtuous cycle of improvement and getting better and making progress, and that only comes from sort of engaging. I had this experience also. It only comes from engaging with your own system on your own terms, in your own way. It doesn't come from this chase to try and find the answer outside of you. Carl, we're actually running out of time, Carl. Oh my God, it's a time. I don't know where it went, but how can people get a hold of you and learn more about what you're doing?
Oh, people can get in touch with me through my website. You can get to my YouTube channel, podcast, and blog from there. So it's carlpullein.com. And that's get from there. I should just point out one more thing on that, though, before we finish.
Yeah.
You're mentioning about the self-improvement thing, something I learned from Tony Robbins, and it's stuck with me now for about 10 years, which is CANI, C-A-N-I, and it's constant and never-ending improvement. If you have that attitude about yourself, not about constant and never-ending improvement in my apps, constant and never-ending improving yourself, you will find a way without the shiny objects.
And it'll come from inside as opposed to
every
rabbit hole, every advertisement, every recommendation, great. Yeah. On that note, strong note of CANI.
Yes.
Carl, thanks for joining us here on the
You're welcome.
Task Management and Blocking Podcast. It's been great having you. And you know what? You're going to come back because there'll be another problem for us to dig into. There's endless problems.
I love these problems.
I can tell.
I love them.
So, guys, as you're listening in, there's going to be a couple of announcements. I'll play the music. So keep listening. There's a bit more to come. Here's a clip from our next episode. And the initial advice he got, he thinks it stops working. The truth is, it is working. It's, as a matter of fact, it's worked so well, it's allowed him to move out to another place. Of course, he doesn't know that. He's just confused. And he wants another set of advice from either the same or a different guru. But he wants something different. And if you want to leave a comment about this episode or any aspect of the work that we're doing here at the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast, you can go over to www.replytofrancis.info and send me either a message by text or send me a voice message, a voice note. And as you probably know, we have a couple of places that you can interact with other people, talk about this episode. One is at the community, multitaskers.scheduleu.org, and you'll see the link in the show notes. And the other, of course, is our upcoming Task Management and Time Blocking Summit coming up in March. Two outstanding opportunities to interact with other people about the ideas that you've heard on this podcast or any of our episodes that are coming up. And if you'd like to support the work we're doing, I invite you to click on the Patreon link below to make a donation. And please don't forget to like our show and recommend it to others on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or whatever podcast app or service you're using. This is Francis Wade. I'm signing out. I hope to see you on a future episode. And until then, take care and all the best. See you later.